work for ACODE. I'm also a senior lecturer in Makerere University. But for this particular interview, I'm representing the Green Economic Coalition, London, in partnership with ACODE to implement this project. So the very first question is your understanding of the circular economy. When you say circular economy.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for looking out for me to interact, and thank you very much for promoting the subject of circular economy. The world has moved from linear economy, so our understanding of circular economy is the conventional definition of circularity. We are the United Nations Environment Program focal point for the country, and so we adopt the standard definition of United Nations, which is basically to ensure that you do not have waste. What you produce as waste should be a starting point for further production as raw material. In other words, you keep producing in a circular way, because matter is not destroyed, neither is matter created. Matter is only transformed. So the idea is that we move away from linear economy where you get raw material, produce, and then generate waste, and then you either backfill the waste. How many backfills will you have? So the idea is that the waste generated should be raw material for further production. But also, not only does it go into circularity only, but also efficiency of use. So in other words, if you asked me for a definition, circular economy is that economy where there is no waste. Waste is supposed to be the end of the production line, one production line, but there are so many other production lines that you can start from that very waste. I will give you an example. In Kasese, copper was being mined at Kirende. That time, what we call the waste from the copper mining, call it cobalt now. That time cobalt was not known, it was not important. The copper tailings, as we would call them, was considered waste, and it was heaped there. A few years later, it was realized that those tailings had a lot of cobalt, which cobalt now was a very thought out mineral, and so we went back now to mine into the copper tailings. So if we had buried it and lost it as waste, that's the resource that we would have lost, which is of use. So the idea is that we must get rid of waste in our economy. Waste should be a raw material for further production, so that the cycle of production and use of matter continues endlessly. That way, you save the environment, you use lesser resources, because if you were going to get raw material continuously, you would have more pressure on the world, on the planet. And so it is a form of economy where there is no waste, and therefore less pressure on natural resources, and therefore sustainability, as opposed to the conventional one, the linear economy, where you get the raw material, produce a good, generate waste, throw away the waste. That's one line.
And I noticed you talked about sustainability.
Absolutely.
And with our movement from linear, why is it significant? Why should we bother?
It's so significant because if I can give you an example of Uganda, in 1962, Uganda had a population of just 8 million. 8 million. We are now 45.9 million. Amount of land, amount of natural resources, amount of all resources, water, they are the same. The lakes we had are the same lakes, rivers are the same, forests have had to decrease. So there is a growing population, but the natural resources are static. So if you do not create innovative ways of sustainable utilization of resources without wasting them, then you won't have enough resources to sustain the population, and the population will put more pressure on the planet. We already have much pressure on the planet. So we must move from the historical linear production model into circular model so that the resources we have can sustain us again and again and again. So it is extremely important. But that's not enough. When you change production models, you create more value. And so circular economy creates more jobs as well, more green jobs. I can give you an example. I've planted my banana plant in the soil. I've created the matoke. I've peeled the matoke. I use the matoke as a manure, fertilize my soil. Now I produce more matoke on the same piece of land. I don't spend on dispose of the waste, so there is save the money. But I also create a job for somebody who is converting the banana peels into manure. So every time you create a production line or a value chain, you generate more jobs, you generate more revenue, you generate more value. So it's not only important for saving our planet and sustaining our population on restricted resources for a longer period, but also it's a new economic model that generates more jobs and more value.
Let's talk NEMA. NEMA,
Yes.
as I told you out there,
Yeah.
the perception is that you come to enforce only. You're either demolishing or telling people to do things in a certain way after things have happened. Regarding the circular economy,
yes,
what specifically is NEMA doing?
Enforcement comes number last in the functions of NEMA within the National Environment Act, Cap 181 now. It is number last. So we do enforcement when everything else has failed. So where you see us enforcing with the force, no, we have tried all the other models, awareness, alternatives. Once they fail, that's when we apply enforcement. But we start from the policy point of view. At national level, you must have heard about green growth strategy for Uganda, which is aligned to Vision 2040 and the national development plans. So Uganda's economy as an economy is already hinged on green development and therefore circular economy. Circular economy is a component of green development, a fundamental one, fundamental component of green development. Because you can't achieve green development when you have a linear economy. It will be impossible. We have inspired and catalyzed and helped advise government to develop policies that support circular economy. Under the National Environment Act, the principle of circularity and circular economy are mainstreamed now in the National Environment Act 2019. From the policy and legal aspects, we have a robust policy and legal framework for circular economy. We've developed several standards for air quality, for noise. Previously, with sectors like sugar industry, cement production industry, plastics sector, to promote the idea of circularity. For example, in the sugar industries now, we require cogeneration of energy. So they use the waste to generate power, to power their operations. We use waste from sugar industry to create manure, which manure is used into sugarcane production and the production of other things. We use waste to generate other products like alcohol, laboratory alcohol, and also the alcohol for our people who take it. If you look at sugar industry, the principle of circularity, we've achieved a lot. It is mainstream. Same applies in plastics. We are promoting now what we call extended producer responsibility. He who produces plastics must put in place mechanisms to buy back the plastics so that it is reused, recycled, or repurposed, so that there is continuous use of the same materials instead of continuing to import virgin materials. As you know, the concept of circular economy is not very old. It is recent. And so in Uganda, we are also still mainstreaming it and pushing it so that all industries can go circular economy. If we had the proper circular economy, we wouldn't have things that happened in Chitezi recently. We would be generating electricity from that waste. We would be generating manure from that waste. We would be getting plastics and metals, glass, and converting them back into those very products through recycling. So we still have a long way to go, but we've started the journey.
I notice you are doing a lot, especially, Uganda is good at policy, and the frameworks are always there.
And implementation.
And implementation, that's yes, where some of us, especially in civil society, have issues.
We must change that narrative that good policies are made in Uganda and implemented elsewhere. Yeah. I don't believe in that.
Briefly, what are the challenges you are faced as NEMA when you are talking about circular economy?
Yes, circularity, the biggest issue is really mindset. We must work with the private sector to convince them that circular economy is pro them. They shouldn't look at it as environmental elitism, because circular economy produces more jobs, produces more profit. I can tell you, if you implement circular economy, you get more value for your money. And the sugar industry is a clear example. Instead of buying power from the grid, they are actually selling now power to the grid. So you are benefiting from what you would otherwise throw away. So the mindset, we need more awareness. There is still resistance. People are still used to their old way of doing things, of produce, use, and put aside what you cannot use. The second issue is capital. Capital to implement circular economy models. Money in Uganda is expensive compared to money elsewhere. So the cost of credit in Uganda is still prohibitive for somebody to acquire, say, equipments that could promote circularity. So we need to address the issue of the cost of credit, because you will go to a private sector person, they have understood the concept, they are willing to implement the concept, but the capital they have to run the business can't give them a recycling machine, for example. I can give you the example of these plastic water bottles. There is now technology in Europe which can convert a plastic water bottle back into a plastic water bottle. This technology, it's not in Africa now. In Africa, what we call recycling is to get that plastic bottle and recycle it back into a lower version plastic, say a jerry can or a PVC paver or a basin, but you don't convert it back into the bottle. Now that would mean that every time you need to use the bottle, you have to use virgin material. And the transport sector, you've seen already, we have a breakthrough. We are moving away from fossil fuel powered buses to electric powered and solar powered also buses. So we need more resources for funding innovation and research, because that should be at the heart of the transformation process. Those are some of the obstacles that we still have to cope with. The awareness is very important to remove or change historical narratives of as it was, so should it be. Those narratives have to be changed, and it will require sensitization, education, demonstrations.
As we conclude, I want to hear from you on two issues. The issue of coordination, especially when it comes to MDAs and the other sectors. For example, NEMA, Ministry of Water and Environment, they are supposed to be together.
Correct.
But the water story is different from the wetland story somehow. The KCCA, we see that disconnect. How is it a challenge as far as NEMA is concerned? How are you working with the other MDAs as you look at the circular economy implementation? Are you working with NPA? Do you think you are in sync with the Ministry? That component of coordination, the governance component of...
We actually hosted an annual symposium on circularity last year, I think, at Serena, and all these players you are talking about were there. Government has a coordination framework. Ministries, departments, agencies are coordinated by the Office of the Prime Minister. Now, within environment, Office of the Prime Minister chairs what we call Policy Committee on Environment. The Policy Committee on Environment has all relevant ministries, and the Policy Committee on Environment meets quarterly. It's a permanent subcommittee of cabinet. So we have good coordination for it. That's why we were able to have green growth strategy for Uganda. That's why we were able to green Vision 2040. We now have what we call program-based budgeting. Now, under program-based budgeting, you work as a group. So we no longer have silos that this is NEMA, this. No. You bring together all entities that must work together to deliver a program output and outcome. For example, we are in the same program with the KC, with the lands. We are in the same program. So the issue of coordination is not a problem. I would say the problem has always been limited resources, in my view. We are well coordinated. We meet regularly. You can't take a policy to cabinet minus consulting all the MDAs, local governments, and the private sector. What we need to do more, going back at what you said, is implementation. We come together, make good policies, but implementation remains elusive with private sector. We have signed a memorandum of understanding, for example, with the Uganda Manufacturers Association, and so the issue of circular economy and green growth is at the heart of our cooperation between us and the Uganda Manufacturers Association. Yeah. So we are in touch with the private sector, we are in touch with government, we are in touch with civil society. We work very well with civil society. ACODE, for example, that's why you are here, and all other players. So we are well coordinated, and every year when we are coming up with the program results and program planning, we bring together all the players.
Overall, what do you think Uganda needs to do to promote the transition to circular economy?
We need to address the bottlenecks, knowledge-based products, or what we call knowledge economy. So to transition, we must have innovations, we must have research to inform the innovations. So we need to put more money in research and innovation. And then we need, as a matter of fact, there are so many technology innovations that have been incubated by universities and research institutions that are not commercialized. And then continuous learning and development, technology transfer from the global north, where they have technology ahead of us. People are talking of now green hydrogen as a form of energy. In Europe, some countries have launched hydrogen-powered trains already. So they are already beyond the battery-powered electric vehicles of circular economic models. Yeah.
On that note, thank you very much, Dr. Barirega.
Pleasure having you, Doctor.
We are glad to have the interview, and we hope you'll have some time when you do the national dialogue.